stories of sub-Saharan Africa lengthened just a tad. Such was the way new additions to the shop were announced. Some days the shop seemed to sparkle, so many books appeared. Other days a few flickers and nothing more. One would think that such a bookshop would eventually burst through its walls, since more and more stories appear in the world, and therefore in the grimoire, every hour, with shelves expanding to accommodate each one. But it is a sad truth that stories also leave the world when they are forgotten, or when the last teller of the tale has died. When this happened, a small flame appeared above the book in question, and, as it burned, the book itself dimmed, lost its shape, and, when the flame snuffed out, so did the book. In this way, although the inside of the shop expanded or contracted to fit the world's tales, it was always the perfect size. Badger, the shaggy black and white mixed-breed dog, curled near Maggie's feet, looked up and cocked his head, one ear flopping. He whined. Maggie scratched his ear. She turned the page. A very old tale. In one version, God exiled the thief to his choice of either sun or moon. In another, the wind made him spend eternity repairing hedgerows on the night's silver disk. No one gave the old man a chance to explain or offer a defense. Maybe he was freezing himself. Maybe he had sick children at home. He had no advocate, no one on his side. Maggie snorted. Wasn't that always the case? It was so easy to judge, to punish, so hard to find justice, and mercy never seemed to enter the picture at all. She closed the book with a thump, causing a puff of dust to explode heavenward, and pushed it away. She slurped up the last of the tea, and then went into the kitchen at the back of the shop to make more. While the kettle heated, she let Badger out the back door into the stone-walled garden. Within it was a seat under an old oak tree, and rose bushes, lilacs, camellias, and hollyhocks that filled the entire shop with fragrance when in bloom. Now, in late October, the garden was quiet and still, falling asleep at the approach of winter. Maggie stood in the doorway and watched Badger sniff around. She thought how Mr. Mustby, the shop's previous proprietor, the man who had saved her life, had loved mornings, and how she'd often found him in the garden when she got up, a coffee in one hand, a book in the other, sitting on the bench under the tree. 3 months after his sudden death, she fancied she still saw him there. A few minutes later, she was back at her desk, sipping her steaming tea. She tapped her fingers on the Moon Story book. Something to learn, certainly, from last night's dream. But what? Well, time would tell. She'd almost grown accustomed to dreaming in fairy tales. As a child, the dreams had been vague, mere snippets of glass mountains, talking frogs, and handless maidens. But when she lost herself to the drug Elysium, all that changed. The boundaries grew thin. Dreams were no longer dreams. They were journeys into the silver world, the world beside this one. What was real and what wasn't blended. Fairy tales, holy myths, ancient figures from the imaginations of 1,000,000 dreamers. They were as real as the hand at the end of one's arm. That was the deadly lure of the Elysium. And even though she'd put down the pipe 3 years ago, her dreams had never returned to their pre-addiction vagueness. Perhaps she'd always had some genetic predisposition. She pinched the bridge of her nose. It was exhausting, as was the grief she was experiencing after Mr. Mustby's recent death. No one ever talked about that. Pain she expected, but this fatigue. Her eyes burned. She didn't want to cry anymore. Maggie tilted her head and rolled her neck, trying to work out the cricks. The little bell sounded over the door. Badger whined and stood. Alvin, maybe?